Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Please subscribe and like to help the channel grow. Today's stories are about monsters. It's about moments when you are alone, when something feels off, and you realize a little too late that you should have trusted that feeling. So get comfortable. Keep your eyes on the parkour if you need a distraction. And let's begin. First story, my grandma used to tell me scary stories when I was little. There's one I'll never forget. I was 10 years old when Grandma came to live with us. It was about 6 months after Granddad passed away, and I guess, looking back, she must have been lonely in that big house of theirs, rattling around with only the grief and memories for company. So despite a few protests from Mum, my parents took her in. There were no protests from me, none at all. Grandma was loud and fun, and I loved her. She had an almost limitless supply of boiled sweets, and she'd always slip me a couple whenever she saw me. She was always the first to stick up for me when I got in trouble, too. But it was her stories I loved best. Grandma had all kinds of stories. Stories about growing up during World War II, and stories about the things she'd get up to with her friends on the South Coast, after her family had been evacuated. Sad stories, funny stories, adventure stories. But it was her scary stories that were my favorite. Grandma had lots of scary stories. She told me she dabbled in the occult when she was a teenager, trying out Ouija boards with her friends. Tarot cards, fortune-telling, all that stuff. Most of the stories I'd laugh off or forget about not long after she was done telling them. But there were a couple that really did spook me a bit. I was only 10 at the time, you have to understand. And Grandma certainly knew how to bring the stories to life. She'd shut off the lights in my room so only the glow of the night sky shone through the curtains, and she'd shuffle in real close. Close enough so I could see the wrinkles on her face and smell the boiled sweets on her breath. Close enough so her deep blue eyes could stare straight into mine. She must have given me nightmares with a few of those tales. But now, years later, there's only one that I can still remember. Only one that stuck with me. The story about the shower and Mr. Longfingers. Grandma told me about Mr. Longfingers one night after I asked about her baths. Grandma used to love her baths. She'd spend ages in them, light candles and incense, and lie in the tub humming to herself until the water turned cold. It drove my mum crazy, but when I asked her why she loved them so much, she said it was the only place she could relax. It was the only place that was safe for her to relax. You know, people like me who are, well, more sensitive to certain things, we have to have baths. She told me seriously one night, shuffling closer on the bed. I couldn't possibly spend that long in the shower. It'd be far too risky. Grandma stared at me with those blue eyes of hers, unsmiling, and I knew it was time for one of her stories. One of the scary ones. I shivered with pleasure and pulled the covers up to my chin. Why is it risky, Grandma? She half turned to look out the window, watching me from the corner of her eye, pausing for effect. I waited, feeling my heart rate pick up ever so slightly in my chest. Well, she said after a moment, it's only risky if you close your eyes, of course. If you close your eyes for longer than 10 seconds. What do you mean? Why? Well, do you ever play that game in the playground with your friends? The one where someone turns their back, and the others sneak up on them when they're not looking. I nodded and Grandma nodded back. Exactly. So that's what it's like in the shower when you have your eyes closed. That's what it's like with Mr. Longfingers. Cold itch tickled back. Who's Mr. Longfingers, Grandma? She let out a deep breath, as if she wished she hadn't said anything, turned her head back to face mine. When she next spoke, she'd lowered her voice. No one knows exactly, Grandma whispered. Some think it's a creature that's attracted to the heat and smell we give off in there. Others think it's a demon that finds a way into our realm through the dense steam clouds. No one can say for sure, because the only ones who have actually seen Mr. Longfingers aren't ever going to be able to tell you. I pulled in a breath. Why not? Grandma shuffled closer along the bed and leaned towards me, leaving my question hanging in the air. Don't you worry about it, sweetheart. Don't worry your pretty head. As long as you remember the rules, you'll be fine. What rules? Well, when you're in the shower, you try not to close your eyes for too long. 5 seconds is fine and 10 is just about okay too. But any longer than that? Yeah? Then what? Well, any longer than that and you may just start to feel something in the room with you. Something watching. And if you ever go longer than 15 seconds, that's when you might start to hear a noise too. Hear what? The soft tap-tap-tap of fingers on glass. Fingers drumming against the glass door of the shower. If you do ever hear that noise, God forbid, will you make me a promise? What, Grandma? Promise me you'll never open your eyes. Asterisk. I barely slept that night. Hardly at all. I'd close my eyes and try to relax. But every time I did, I'd imagine a face pressed against my bedroom window, staring in at me. And when I did finally get to sleep, I had nightmares. Bad ones. I had them all week, in fact. Dreams about disembodied eyes watching me in the dark, and long fingers reaching out to touch my exposed skin. It wasn't any better when I was awake, either. Not really. The shower was the worst. That's when Grandma's story really got to me. I'd never thought about it before, but suddenly I had trouble shutting my eyes in there. I'd be standing beneath the beating water, shampoo running down my face, and as soon as I squinted my eyelids closed, I'd hear Grandma's words running through my head. 5 seconds is fine and 10 is just about okay too. But any longer than that, I'd rub my hair fast, feeling the shampoo dripping off my chin, and as soon as I'd counted past 5 seconds, I'd feel it. A sort of pressure. Not a feeling of being watched exactly, but something close to that. I'd run my fingers faster and faster through my hair, frantically trying to get the suds out, and the ready blackness behind my closed eyes coupled with the rush of water in my ears would feel like a held breath, like the silence before a scream. The seconds would race through my mind and I'd be so desperate to open my eyes again that I'd sometimes do it before my hair was rinsed fully clean, and my eyes would sting with shampoo. But before I shut them again, I'd always be sure to peer out through the steamed glass door of the shower cubicle, just to make sure I was still alone. It wasn't long before Mum realized something was up. She heard me crying out in my sleep one night and came in to comfort me, asked me what the matter was, and it all came out. I told her about Grandma's stories and about Mr. Longfingers. She got this look on her face when I was telling her, like she used to get with me when I'd made her really mad. This wide-eyed, angry look. Only this time she wasn't angry with me. She was angry with Grandma. My parents' room was next to mine, and sometimes if I pressed my ear against the wall, I could hear them talking in there. Soft whispers. That night, though, after Mum was satisfied I wasn't scared anymore and she'd gone back to her room, the whispers weren't soft at all. Oh no, I heard Mum hissing to Dad about Grandma, about the story she'd told me. Mum's voice floated through the wall, sharp and crisp. You know what your fucking mother said to him now? Don't you, Simon? Dad's response was an unintelligible mutter. She's told him there's a monster that'll get him if he shuts his eyes in the shower. A monster. The poor kid's been having nightmares about it all week. Seriously, Simon, you'd better say something to her tomorrow morning, first thing, or I will. Grandma came to visit me in my room the following night. That time, as she perched on the end of my bed, there were no stories. Nothing like that. Grandma just sat there and stared down at me, her blue eyes wide and sad. The light from the moon outside my window lit up her wrinkled face. You know I'd never let anything bad happen to you, don't you? She said after a moment. I nodded my head. I know, Grandma. You know I wouldn't let you come to any harm? I nodded again. Okay, good. That's good. She looked away from me for a moment, out the window. You know, the things I tell you in the evening are meant to help you, sweetheart. They're meant to toughen you up a bit. Protect you. She paused and shook her head. But maybe your mum's right. Maybe I went too far this time. She looked down at me and smiled. But even then, even though I was only 10 years old, I could tell it didn't quite reach her eyes. I'll tell you what, Grandma said. You know what I told you about Mr. Longfingers and the shower? Well, I'm going to make sure you're safe. I'll scare the bastard off. How about that? It won't come back in a hurry if it has to face me. I stared up at Grandma, watching her face glow in the moonlight, watching her smile down at me. I nodded my head once. Asterisk. I was the one who found her. I don't know when exactly it happened, but I'd guess it was about a week after we had that talk in my room. A week after she told me she wouldn't let me come to any harm. I woke early that morning, from a bad dream to a heavy thumping sound. I sat bolt upright in bed. My room was quiet around me, and I couldn't hear anything from the wall that joined my parents' room, either. But the house wasn't entirely silent. Floating down the hall, muffled by my closed door, I could hear the sound of rushing water, the noise of the shower. I leapt out of bed and ran down the upstairs hallway, heart already pounding in my chest. As soon as I reached the closed bathroom door, I started banging on it. A deep terror was welling up inside me like cold water from a well, something I couldn't place, and I kept banging and shouting, "Grandma!" over and over again, even though she didn't respond. Off to my right, I was dimly aware of voices from my parents' room, the sleepy shuffle of footsteps, but before they had a chance to make it out onto the landing, I'd lifted my hand to test out the door handle, more out of instinct than because I thought it might actually open. But the door wasn't locked. I kept banging with my free hand, and it swung suddenly inwards, bringing me face to face with a wall of steam. Heat struck my skin. I squinted my eyes against the damp fog and peered into the bathroom. And before Dad pushed me to one side, before everything around me descended into shouting and tears and chaos, I saw her. I saw Grandma. She was lying naked on the floor in the shower cubicle, the water beating down around her, blue eyes bulging from her face. One hand was curled against her chest, like a dead bird, while the other trailed against the glass of the shower cubicle, the flailing finger marks she'd carved through the steam still clear and fresh. Asterisk. It was a heart attack that killed her. That's what my dad told me. He said Grandma was old, and the thing had struck her quickly and suddenly. She would have died fast and without pain, Dad said. She wouldn't have suffered. I knew better, though. Even as a 10-year-old kid, I knew better. And years later, writing this as an adult, I still know better. I also know my wife and kids resent me for refusing to have a shower in the house, for insisting everyone take baths. They pretend it's okay, and they humor me, but I can tell they don't really understand it. Not at all. My wife thinks she does. She thinks I still carry the trauma of seeing my grandmother dying in front of me when I was little. I guess she's right, in a way, but she doesn't know the full truth. Nobody does. And no one would believe me even if I told them. No one would believe me if I said the reason I don't take showers, the reason I haven't had one since I was 10 years old, isn't because I'm scarred from the sight of a dead body. It's because all those years ago, when I crept back into the still hot bathroom after the paramedics had taken Grandma's body downstairs, I made sure to check the marks her fingers had carved through the steamed glass of the shower cubicle. And those marks weren't just on the inside. Second story, I dared my best friend to ruin my life. He's succeeding. My name is Xander, and my best friend is trying to ruin my life. Started out very small, but has quickly grown out of control. I'm currently sitting inside a church, using their Wi-Fi to post this story and taking advantage of their air conditioning. I'm posting this story in case he finds me and kills me soon. It's only a matter of time now, and I want someone to know what happened before I die. 2 years ago, my friend David and I were sitting on the couch at my house thoroughly bored. It wasn't a temporary boredom either. It was a resounding boredom with life. We both worked full-time at the local movie theater making minimum wage and cleaning up after idiots who couldn't keep popcorn and soda in their mouths. We had graduated high school 2 years prior and had no plans to attend college. Life looked bleak for us. College didn't sound appealing, work was annoying, and the little free time we had was blown on video games and YouTube. We both still lived with our parents too, which made dating somewhat embarrassing. Looking back, I'm sure we were suffering from mild depression on top of everything else. These life circumstances blended together to create the perfect storm for what I now have to call my reality. As we sat on the couch at my parents' house, channel surfing the TV, David asked me if I was bored with life. I responded in the positive, and he sighed. High school was so easy because we knew our purpose and our goals were set for us. Outline the English essay, finish the math homework, get decent grades, pass the driving exam, be home by curfew, find a girlfriend, Now that we're out of high school, there's no structure. Our lives have become meaningless, and we are just floating through space with no aim or purpose. Would you go back to high school then? I asked. He shook his head. In the moment, high school was annoying. It's only after looking back that I see how much better it was than I realized. What's the solution then? I asked. Either go somewhere that has structure and can deliver what high school gave us, or create our own structure, David replied. Well, I don't want to go to college or the military, I said, and I can't think of anywhere else that provides the same structure. Guess I have to make my own, but I have no idea where to start. The thing about high school was that it required a minimum effort. If you didn't give that minimum effort, you would face the consequences. The consequences were bad enough that you and I would put effort into school. When high school ended, that minimum effort level decreased. Now our minimum effort is not enough to improve ourselves. Whatever structure we build has to have those consequences built in and a minimum effort that forces us to improve constantly. David was and is a very intellectual person. He thinks about everything if you can't already tell. I was pretty dumb compared to him, but I stuck around because he always had interesting things to say. This conversation definitely counted as interesting. I won't bore you with the entire conversation that we had, but it lasted an hour where we discussed how to build structure into our lives. I want to emphasize here that boredom is dangerous. Well, it's not dangerous by itself, but it can quickly lead to dangerous things. Boredom can lead to pain, accidental children, technology that disrupts a monopoly, and even death. Our boredom led to a dare. I dare you to try and ruin my life, David said. What does that mean? I asked. It's a way to build structure into my life. If I know that you are always trying to ruin my life and actively trying to make me fail, then I am driven to fight back and act on initiative. But how could I ruin your life? I asked. You could ruin anyone's life if you gave it enough thought, planning, and action, David said with a smirk. I'm not going to give you any ideas. I just want you to try and ruin my life. I remember sitting back and thinking about what he meant. The first thoughts that came to mind were about tripping him occasionally, or hiding his toothbrush every time I went to his house. My young mind didn't fully understand how serious David was being. His mind was running 3 tracks above mine, so I didn't know what I was getting into when I said, "Okay, I'll try to ruin your life, but I dare you to try and ruin my life as well." He smiled with a newfound enthusiasm, and I smiled back. I had hoped it would be a great way to relieve my boredom with life. David stood up and punched me in the leg as hard as he could. I shouted at him, mostly out of surprise. He just laughed. "The dare starts now," he said, grabbing his shoes. "We are no longer friends, we are nemesis." He opened my front door and looked over his shoulder. "Good luck," he said. "I hope you'll work half as hard as I will." Once he left, I just sat there rubbing my sore thigh. Okay, I thought, if he wants a war, he'll get a war. That night, I had laid awake trying to think of ways to make his life harder for him. My ideas were all so childish and useless compared to what he would later throw at me. I'm too embarrassed to list my ideas from back then. I wish I could say I remembered the day David turned against me for real, but it was so subtle that I didn't notice right away. To my face, David acted completely normal. While we were at work, I would sprinkle popcorn over a section he had just cleaned and point it out to him. He would just laugh and say, "Is that supposed to ruin my life?" Then he would clean it up. I expected him to do the same to me, but he didn't. His lack of visible retaliation made me bored again, so I stopped. Looking back, I suspect that behind my back he was sabotaging my image with our other coworkers and our boss. Out of the blue, my boss called me into his office and told me that I was fired because I wasn't doing a good enough job. David acted sorry I was leaving and we promised to hang out again soon. I left, thinking I could make this something good and get a real job. That dream died, and I ended up at McDonald's instead. After I had been at McDonald's for a month or so, my parents confronted me. They asked me if I had been stealing cash from their wallets. I had never stolen a cent from them and told them so. They backed off, but only for a week until my mom's debit card went missing. They confronted me again, this time very angry. They accused me of withdrawing several $100s using my mom's debit card. I have no siblings, so it wouldn't have been anyone else in the house. It turned into a screaming match, and they demanded that I move out as quickly as possible. With my small cache of savings, I found an apartment near the local community college that housed college students. The rent was affordable enough for me, so I moved out within the month. I moved in and became instant friends with two of my roommates, Clark and Ivan. Our other roommate, Isaac, kept to himself and stayed in his room playing video games 24/7. Life got good again because I hung out with Clark and Ivan frequently. David and I had stopped hanging out after I was fired from the movie theater. I hadn't forgotten about him, but I had forgotten about the dare. Every once in a while, I would message him on Facebook or shoot him a text to ask if he wanted to hang out, but my messages were always ignored. Eventually, I gave up. Within 6 months, I had a great life going. I was dating a girl named Katie. I had been promoted to crew trainer at McDonald's, which paid better, and my bank account was slowly growing. I only recognized this as David's doing when I look back, but an obscene amount of junk mail showed up with my name on it every single day. Magazines, credit card offers, vacation ads, and even physical letters from real people who claimed to be excited to be my new pen pal. I sorted through them every day trying to find some pattern. Clark and Ivan thought it was hilarious. When I came home late from work, they would sometimes toss the junk mail in the air like confetti as I walked through the door, cheering that the mail king was home. One day, I remember feeling sick of getting all this junk mail and deciding to sit down, call every subscription to cancel. I recruited Clark and Ivan to help me, and we sat down with snacks one afternoon and started to crank through phone calls. In a few days, the tide of junk mail subsided and we celebrated our efforts. That only lasted a week. The next week, it started coming back in full force. There was twice as much as before, and even some pornographic magazines in the mix. Not only did my physical junk mail increase, but my email became unnavigable through all the new spam messages. Google moved a lot of it to the spam filter, but there were still hundreds of emails that made it through. My email had been subscribed to websites I'd never even heard of. Clark and Ivan were blown away by the new tide of junk mail. The event was dubbed Return of the Junk and became a great icebreaker for Clark and Ivan to introduce me to other people at parties. One day I was browsing Facebook's People You May Know section when I came across someone's profile that had my picture, but a different name. The account was open for anyone to view and had a lot of porn posts, status updates full of swearing, and praises to Hitler. I frowned when I clicked on their pictures. Most of the pictures were the same ones from my Facebook account, but there were some pictures of me that weren't on my account or anywhere else online. Keep in mind, I didn't remember my dare to David, so I was feeling pretty creeped out. I hit the report button and let Facebook know that the account was a fake and went on my way. I think 3 months or so later is when more stuff started to happen. Katie and I are getting very serious and discuss moving in together. The junk mail still rolls in and I've started to just throw it away. Ivan has moved out to go to an actual university, so a new roommate Jackson has moved in. Clark and I attempted to befriend Jackson, but he's similar to Isaac and locked himself in his room most of the time. A new game became available for pre-order, so I submitted my email to reserve a copy. When I tried to log into my email to make sure the reserve code was there, I couldn't log in. I hit Forgot Password, and it asked if I wanted to use my phone number to reset the password. I pressed yes and waited for my phone to light up. It never did. I pressed the button 3 more times, but no text ever came. I tried old passwords I used to use, but none of them worked. I frowned, but eventually just walked away from my computer. I try again a different day. I sat down on the couch and pulled up Facebook on my phone. Pop-up appeared. "You've been signed out," it said. Then it jumped to the login screen. I thought I'd hit the logout button on accident, so I just typed in my email and password. It didn't work. I tried again, but it still told me the password was incorrect. My phone buzzed in my hand. Katie was calling me. I answered it and immediately became concerned. She was sobbing. "Katie," I said. "You coward," she spat. "You don't get to just Facebook me that shit. No, you have to talk to me and tell me with your voice." "Katie, what are you talking about?" I asked. "Don't play stupid, asshole. Say it." "Say what?" "You Facebook me and say we are through, but when I call, you deny everything?" What the hell are you trying to pull, Xander? Katie hissed. Katie, my Facebook got hacked. I was literally just trying to log in when you called. Are you at home? I'm coming over. We are not done. We are far from done, sweetheart. It took me some time to convince Katie that it hadn't been me, but she relented when I showed her that I couldn't log in. I Googled how to get my Facebook account back and contacted their help center. Thankfully, they were able to get me back into my account. Lots of links to porn sites had been posted all over my page by whoever jacked my account, so I spent time deleting all of those. I also spent time answering family members who asked about the strange content I had been posting. Awkward. Katie also found out through her feeds that my Twitter and Instagram had been hacked. The accounts were posting hundreds of crude messages and pictures. Those two sites took a little more effort, but eventually I regained control over those two. Fixing my email took a couple of days, but I got access again. Not wanting to repeat the experience, I made my passwords into really long strings of numbers, letters, and symbols. Each account had a different password. For anyone who has done this, you know how impossible it would be to memorize your passwords. I wrote them down on a sheet of paper and put it in my dresser drawer. I didn't intend to get hacked again. I'm telling you where I put the paper so you'll know how freaked out I was when Facebook signed me out again the next week. I checked my other accounts. Locked out again. I shot Katie a text to warn her and then called the Facebook help center again. They gave me access to Facebook and gave me the same warning about making a long password. When I told them the type of precautions I had taken last time, they suggested checking my computer for viruses in case there was a keyloggers collecting all the information I typed. I called a computer repair center and asked what I needed to do to get my computer scanned. They asked me to bring it down and they'd check it out. I had a desktop, so bringing it down required a lot of unplugging. When I got down behind the computer to unplug everything, I found a tiny USB stick that I'd never seen before. I frowned and tried to locate its contents on the computer. The computer said no USB was attached. The computer repair guy confirmed that the USB drive was a keylogger. He asked if my computer had ever been anywhere that anyone could walk up and use it. I told him no, and he said he had no idea how it could have gotten there. He didn't charge me anything, just warned me to keep an eye on my computer. I changed all my passwords again, going through the motions to get my accounts back. A few days later, I received 3 credit card bills in the mail. I still had the habit of skimming through the junk mail in case there ever was anything super important. I'm glad I did, because I might never have found out about the credit cards that were registered in my name. I called the credit card companies to inform them that they were mistaken. I had never signed up for a credit card. My parents had warned me about them so often that I'd been deterred from ever getting one. Before you comment and tell me I need them to build my credit, yes, I know that now. A quick Google search told me what to do next. I called Equifax, which is a company that calculates your credit score and tells creditors that it's okay for you to open a credit account. I placed a 90-day fraud alert on my credit. They said they would call me if anyone tried to open a credit account in my name. The dude at Equifax was kind enough to tell me what I needed to do next. He asked me to go online and view my credit report. If I saw any accounts I didn't recognize, I was to write them down and fill out a complaint to the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, explaining the situation. Once I had that submitted, I was to file a copy of it with the police and create a police report. Then I had to take those 2 reports and call each of the credit companies that had issued credit to my identity and start the dispute process. I instantly felt very discouraged at the amount of effort this would require. It felt utterly insane to be required to follow all these steps just because I was the victim of identity theft. Goddamn. Clark was horrified at what had happened and looked at his credit score. He was relieved when it came back clean. I made Katie check hers too just in case. Also clean. I'll take a minute to tell everyone reading that you are entitled by law to 1 free credit report per year from each of the 3 credit score companies. That means you can and should check your credit 3 times a year. Clark and I set reminders on our phones to check the scores again in 4 months. I asked Katie to do the same. When I first found out about the accounts, I had called my parents to ask if they had opened any accounts in my name. If they had, I'd at least know who the culprit was. They told me they hadn't opened any accounts, and I warned them about my problems. They promised to check their credit score. 2 weeks after I had called them, my dad called. They found 15 fraudulent accounts between the two of them. What the hell? I told him the steps he needed to take, and he was grateful for my help and warning. I know this is boring to read, but I want you to realize how insanely painful it was to fix all of this shit. Seriously, watch your credit reports and nip identity theft in the bud before it happens to you. I had requested detailed bills from the credit card companies that had issued the fraudulent accounts, and they mailed them to me. The bills were full of online purchases. The accounts had been opened almost a year ago, and in that time the thief had spent $62,000 between all the fraudulent accounts. I was pretty upset that in a full year, I had only just found any credit card bills in the mail. I must have been tossing them with the mountains of junk mail. Now I know that the masses of junk mail were deliberate and calculated so the bills would blend in and hopefully get thrown away. The first few transactions were from stores like Target, Walmart, etc. But the further down I went, the less I recognized. One word stuck out to me: Bitcoin. I had learned a little about it from my Facebook feed as I had some friends from high school who touted it as the next real currency. According to the credit card statements, several $1,000s had been exchanged into Bitcoin. I started really researching Bitcoin and trying to figure out what it was and why an identity thief would want it. To make the explanation short, Bitcoin allowed my thief to make completely anonymous purchases online. It was as if he'd gone to an ATM and drained all the credit cards into cash. I didn't foresee the credit card companies ever getting their money back. David now had a hell of a lot of cash he could use to ruin my life. I didn't know it was him at the time, obviously, but now I do. Guys, identity theft is a serious crime and is very damaging to everyone in the economy. And while the theft had been bad, my life was about to get a whole lot worse. That's all I have time to write for now. I have to go and get some serious shit taken care of. I'll write again as soon as I can. My name is Xander, and my best friend is trying to ruin my life. Third story, I'm a long-haul trucker. I stopped for a lost kid on a deserted highway in the dead of night. What I saw attached to him and the question he asked is why I don't drive anymore. This happened a few years back. I was doing long-haul, mostly cross-country routes, the kind that take you through vast stretches of nothing. You know the ones where the radio turns to static for hours, and the only sign of life is the occasional pair of headlights going the other way, miles apart. I was young, eager for the miles, the money, didn't mind the solitude, or so I thought. The route I was on took me across a long, desolate stretch of highway that ran between the borders of two large governmental territories. I don't want to say exactly where, but think big, empty spaces, lots of trees, not much else. It was notorious among drivers for being a dead zone. No signal, no towns for 100 miles either side, and prone to weird weather. Most guys tried to hit it during daylight, but schedules are schedules. Mine had me crossing it deep in the night. I remember the feeling. Utter blackness outside the sweep of my headlights. The kind of dark that feels like it's pressing in on the cab. The only sounds were the drone of the diesel engine, the hiss of the air brakes now and then, and the rhythmic thrum of the tires on asphalt. Hypnotic. Too hypnotic. I'd been driving for about 10 hours with a short break a few states back. Coffee was wearing off. The dashboard lights were a dull green glow, comforting in a way, but also making the darkness outside seem even more absolute. My eyelids felt like they had lead weights attached. You fight it, you know? Slap your face. Roll down the window for a blast of cold air. Crank up whatever music you can find that hasn't dissolved into static. I was doing all of that. It must have been around 2 or 3 a.m. I was in that weird state where you're not quite asleep, but not fully awake either. Like your brain is running on low power mode. The white lines on the road were starting to blur together, stretching and warping. Standard fatigue stuff. I remember blinking hard, trying to refocus. That's when I saw it, or thought I saw it. Just a flicker at the edge of my headlights, on the right shoulder of the road. Small, low to the ground. For a split second, I registered a shape, vaguely human-like, and then it was gone, swallowed by the darkness as I passed. My first thought? Deer. Or a coyote. Common enough. But it hadn't moved like an animal. It had been upright. My brain, sluggish as it was, tried to process it. Too small for an adult. Too still for an animal startled by a rig. Then the logical part, the part that was still trying to keep me safe on the road, chimed in, "You're tired. Seeing things. Happens." And I almost accepted that. I really did. Shook my head, took a swig of lukewarm water from the bottle beside me, kept my eyes glued to the road ahead. The image, though, it kind of stuck. A small, upright shape, like a child. No way, I told myself. Out here? Middle of nowhere? Middle of the night? Impossible. Kids don't just wander around on interterritorial highways at 3 a.m. It had to be a trick of the light, a bush, my eyes playing games. I've seen weirder things born of exhaustion. Shadows that dance, trees that look like figures. It's part of the job when you're pushing limits. I drove on for maybe another 30 seconds, the image fading, my rational mind starting to win. Just a figment. Then, I glanced at my passenger side mirror. Habit. Always checking. And my blood went cold. Not just cold, it felt like it turned to slush. There, illuminated faintly by the red glow of my trailer lights receding into the distance, was the reflection of a small figure, standing on the shoulder of the road, exactly where I'd thought I'd seen something. It wasn't a bush. It wasn't a shadow. It was small, and it was definitely standing there, unmoving, as my truck pulled further and further away. My heart started hammering against my ribs. This wasn't fatigue. This was real. There was something back there, and it looked tiny. Every instinct screamed at me. Danger. Wrong. Keep going. But another voice, the one that makes us human, I suppose, whispered something else. A kid? Alone out here? What if they're hurt? Lost? I fought with myself for a few seconds that stretched into an eternity. The image in the mirror was getting smaller, fainter. If I didn't act now, they'd be lost to the darkness again. God, the thought of leaving a child out there, if that's what it was, against my better judgment, against that primal urge to just floor it, I made a decision. I slowed the rig, the air brakes hissing like angry snakes, pulled over to the shoulder, the truck groaning in protest, put on my hazards, their rhythmic flashing cutting into the oppressive blackness. Then, I did what you're never supposed to do with a full trailer on a narrow shoulder. I started to reverse, slowly, carefully, my eyes flicking between the mirrors, trying to keep the trailer straight, trying to relocate that tiny figure. The crunch of gravel under the tires sounded unnaturally loud. Took a minute, maybe two, but it felt like an hour. The red glow of my tail lights eventually washed over the spot again. And there it was. Kid. I stopped the truck so my cab was roughly alongside them, maybe 10 feet away. Switched on the high beams, hoping to get a better look, and also to make myself clearly visible as just a truck, not something else. The kid was small, really small. I guess maybe 6, 7 years old? Hard to tell in the glare. They were just standing there on the very edge of the gravel shoulder, right where the trees began. The woods pressed in close on this stretch of road, tall, dark pines and dense undergrowth that looked like a solid black wall just beyond the reach of my lights. The kid wasn't looking at me. They were facing sort of parallel to the road, just walking, slowly, like they were on a stroll, completely oblivious to the massive 18-wheeler that had just pulled up beside them, engine rumbling, lights blazing. They were wearing what looked like pajamas. Thin, light-colored pajamas. In the chill of the night. No coat, no shoes that I could see. My mind reeled. This was wrong. So many levels of wrong. I killed the engine. The sudden silence was almost deafening, amplifying the crickets. The rustle of leaves in the woods from a breeze I couldn't feel in the cab. My heart was still thumping. A weird mix of fear and adrenaline and a dawning sense of responsibility. I rolled down the window. The night air hit me, cold and damp, carrying the scent of pine and wet earth. "Hey!" I called out. My voice sounded hoarse, too loud in the quiet. "Hey, kid!" No response. They just kept walking, one small bare foot in front of the other, at a pace that was taking them absolutely nowhere fast. Their head was down, slightly. I couldn't see their face properly. "Kid, are you okay?" I tried again, louder this time. Slowly, so slowly, the kid stopped. They didn't turn their head fully, just sort of angled it a fraction, enough that I could see a pale sliver of cheek in the spill of my headlights. Still not looking at me, still ignoring the multi-ton machine idling beside them. A prickle of unease ran down my spine. Not the normal kind of unease. This was deeper, colder. Animals act weird sometimes. But kids? A lost kid should be scared, relieved, something. This one was nothing. "What are you doing out here all alone?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, friendly, like you're supposed to with a scared kid. Even though this one didn't seem scared at all. It's the middle of the night. Silence. Just the sound of their bare feet scuffing softly on the gravel as they took another step. Then another. As if my presence was a minor inconvenience. A background noise they were choosing to ignore. This wasn't right. My internal alarm bells were clanging louder now. My hand hovered near the gear stick. Part of me wanted to slam it into drive and get the hell out of there. But the image of this tiny child, alone, possibly in shock, couldn't just leave. Could I? "Where are your parents?" I pushed, my voice a bit sharper than I intended. "Are you lost?" Finally, the kids stopped walking completely. They turned their head, just a little more. Still not looking directly at my cab, more towards the front of my truck, into the glare of the headlights. I could see their face a bit better now. Pale, featureless in the harsh light, like a porcelain doll. Small, dark smudges that might have been eyes. No expression. None. Not fear, not sadness, not relief. Just blank. An unreadable slate. Then a voice. Small, thin, like the rustle of dry leaves. "Lost." Just that one word. It hung in the air between us. Relief washed over me, quickly followed by a fresh wave of concern. "Okay, lost. That's something I can deal with." "Okay, kid. Lost is okay. We can fix lost. Where do you live? Where were you going?" The kid finally, slowly, turned their head fully towards my cab. Towards me. I still couldn't make out much detail in their face. The angle, the light, something was obscuring it, keeping it in a sort of shadowy vagueness despite the headlights. But I could feel their gaze. It wasn't like a normal kid's look. There was a weight to it, an intensity that was deeply unsettling for such a small form. "Home," the kid said, that same thin, reedy voice. "Trying to get home. Right home. Where is home?" I asked, leaning forward a bit, trying to project reassurance. "Is it near here? Did you wander off from a campsite?" "A car." There were no campsites for miles. No broken-down cars on the shoulder. I knew that. The kid didn't answer that question directly. Instead, they took a small step towards the truck. Then another. My hand tensed on the door handle, ready to open it, to offer what? A ride? Shelter? I didn't know. "It's cold out here," I said, stating the obvious. "You should get in. We can get you warm, and I can call for help when we get to a spot with a signal." My CB was useless, just static. My phone had shown no service for the last hour. The kid stopped about 5 feet from my passenger door, still in that pale, thin pajama-like outfit, barefoot on the sharp gravel. They should be shivering, crying. They were doing neither. "Can you help me?" the kid asked. The voice was still small, but there was a different inflection to it now. Less flat. A hint of something else. Pleading, maybe? "Yeah, of course I can help you," I said. "That's why I stopped. Where are your parents? How did you get here?" The kid tilted their head. A jerky, unnatural little movement. "They're waiting. At home." "Okay, and where's home? Which direction?" I gestured vaguely up and down the empty highway. The kid didn't point down the road. They made a small, subtle gesture with their head, a little nod towards the trees, towards the impenetrable darkness of the woods lining the highway. "In there," the kid said. My stomach clenched. "In the woods? Your home is in the woods." "Lost?" the kid repeated, as if that explained everything. "Trying to find the path. It's dark." "Yeah, it's very dark," I agreed, my eyes scanning the treeline. It looked like a solid wall of black. No sign of any path, any habitation. Just dense, old-growth forest. The kind of place you could get lost in for days, even in daylight. Can you come out? The kid asked. Help me look? It's not far. I can't see it from here. Every rational thought in my head screamed no. Get out of the truck? In the middle of nowhere, in the pitch dark with this strange child who wanted me to go into those woods. No, absolutely not. But the kid looked so small, so vulnerable. If there was even a tiny chance they were telling the truth, that their house was just a little way in, and they were genuinely lost. I don't think that's a good idea, buddy, I said, trying to sound gentle. It's dangerous in there at night. For both of us. Best thing is for you to hop in here with me. We'll drive until we get a signal and then we'll call the police or the rangers. They can help find your home properly. The kid just stood there, that blank, unreadable face fixed on me. But it's right there, they insisted, their voice a little more insistent now. Just a little way. I can almost see it. If you just step out. The light from your door would help. My skin was crawling. There was something profoundly wrong with this scenario. The way they were trying to coax me out. The lack of normal emotional response. The pajamas. The bare feet. The woods. I looked closer at the kid, trying to pierce that strange vagueness around their features. My headlights were bright, but it was like they absorbed the light rather than reflected it. Their eyes, I still couldn't really see their eyes. Just dark hollows. I really think you should get in the truck, I said, my voice firmer now. It's warmer in here. We can figure it out together. The kid took another step closer. They were almost at my running board now. Please, they said, that reedy voice again. My leg hurts. I can't walk much further. If you could just help me a little, just to the path. My internal conflict was raging. My trucker instincts, honed by years of seeing weird stuff and hearing weirder stories at truck stops, were blaring warnings. But the human part, the part that saw a child in distress, was still there, still arguing. I was tired. So damn tired. Maybe I wasn't thinking straight. Maybe this was all some bizarre misunderstanding. I squinted, trying to see past the kid, towards the tree line they'd indicated. Was there a faint trail I was missing? A flicker of light deep in the woods? No, nothing. Just blackness. Solid, unyielding blackness. And then I saw it. It wasn't something I saw clearly at first. It was more like an anomaly. A disturbance in the darkness behind the kid. The kid was standing with their back mostly to the woods, facing my truck. Behind them, the darkness of the forest was absolute. Or it should have been. But there was something connected to them. Something that stretched from the small of their back, from under the thin pajama top, and disappeared into the deeper shadows of the trees. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, a weird shadow cast by my headlights hitting them at an odd angle. Maybe a rope they were dragging? A piece of clothing snagged on a branch? I leaned forward, trying to get a clearer view. The kid was still talking, their voice a low, persistent murmur. It's not far, please. Just help me. I'm so cold. But I wasn't really listening to the words anymore. I was focused on that thing behind them. It wasn't a rope. It wasn't a shadow. It was a tube. A long, dark, thick tube. It seemed to emerge directly from the kid's lower back, impossibly seamlessly. It was dark matte, like a strip of the night itself given form, and it snaked away from the child, maybe 10, 15 feet, before disappearing into the inky blackness between two thick pine trunks. It wasn't rigid. It seemed to have a slight, almost imperceptible flexibility, like a massive, sluggish umbilical cord made of shadow. It didn't reflect any light from my headlamps. Just absorbed it. My breath hitched in my throat. My blood, which had been cold before, now felt like it had frozen solid. This wasn't just wrong. This was impossible. Unnatural. The kid was still trying to coax me. Are you going to help me? It's just there. You're so close. My voice, when I finally found it, was barely a whisper. I couldn't take my eyes off that appendage. Kid, what is that? Behind you. The kid flinched. Not a big movement, just a tiny, almost imperceptible tightening of their small frame. Their head, which had been tilted pleadingly, straightened. The blankness on their face seemed to solidify. "What's what?" they asked, their voice suddenly devoid of that pleading tone. It was flat again, colder. That thing," I stammered, pointing with a shaking finger. "Coming out of your back, going into the woods. What is that?" The kid didn't turn to look. They didn't need to. Their gaze, those dark, unseen eyes, bored into me. "It's nothing," they said. The voice was still small, but it had a new edge to it. A hardness. "You're seeing things. You're tired." They were using my own earlier rationalization against me. "No," I said, my voice gaining a tremor of conviction born of sheer terror. "No, I'm not. I see it. It's right there. It's connected to you." The kid was silent for a long moment. The only sound was the thumping of my own heart, so loud I was sure they could hear it. The crickets had stopped. The wind seemed to die down. An unnatural stillness fell over the scene. Then the kid's face began to change. It wasn't a dramatic movie monster transformation. It was far more subtle and far more terrifying. The blankness didn't leave, but it sharpened. The pale skin seemed to tighten over the bones. The areas where the eyes were, those dark smudges, seemed to deepen, to become more shadowed, more intense. And a flicker of something ancient and utterly alien passed across their features. It wasn't human anger. It was something older, colder, and infinitely more patient, now strained to its limit. The air in my cab suddenly felt thick, heavy, hard to breathe. "Just come out of the truck," the kid said. And the voice? Oh God, the voice. It wasn't the small, reedy voice of a child anymore. It was deeper, resonant, with a strange, grating undertone, like stones grinding together. It was coming from that small frame, but it was impossibly large, impossibly old. It vibrated in my chest. "Come out. Now." The command was absolute. My hand, which had been hovering near the gear stick, now gripped it like a lifeline. My other hand fumbled for the ignition key, which I'd stupidly left in. "What are you?" I choked out, staring at the monstrous thing playing dress-up in a child's form, at the dark, pulsating tube that was its anchor to the shadows. The kid's head tilted again, that jerky, unnatural movement. The expression on its face, if you could call it that, was one of pure, unadulterated annoyance. Contempt, like I was a particularly stupid insect it had failed to swat. And then it spoke, in that same terrible, resonant, grinding voice. The words it said are burned into my memory, colder than any winter night. "Why?" it rasped, the sound seeming to scrape the inside of my skull. "The FSK are humans smarter now?" That was it. That one sentence. The sheer cosmic frustration in it. The implication of past encounters, of easier prey. The utter alien nature of it. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I reacted. Primal fear, the kind that bypasses all higher brain function, took over. My hand twisted the key. The diesel engine roared back to life. A sudden, violent explosion of sound in the horrifying stillness. The kid, the thing, actually recoiled. A small, jerky step back. The expression, that awful, tightened, ancient look, intensified. I slammed the gear stick into drive. My foot stomped on the accelerator. The truck lurched forward, tires spinning on the gravel for a terrifying second before they bit into the asphalt. I didn't look at it. Couldn't. I stared straight ahead, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, the whole cab vibrating around me. The truck surged forward, gaining speed with agonizing slowness. For a horrible moment, I imagined that tube thing whipping out, trying to snag the trailer, to pull me back, to drag me into those woods. I imagined that small figure, with its ancient, terrible voice, somehow keeping pace. I risked a glance in my driver's side mirror. It was standing there, on the shoulder, unmoving. The headlights of my departing truck cast its small silhouette into sharp relief. And behind it, the dark tube was still visible, a thick, obscene cord snaking back into the endless night of the forest. It didn't seem to be retracting or moving. It just was. The thing didn't pursue. It just stood and watched me go. And that, somehow, was almost worse. The sheer confidence, the patience, like it knew there would be others. Or maybe it was just annoyed that this particular attempt had failed. I drove. I don't know for how long. I just drove. My foot was welded to the floor. The engine screamed. I watched the speedometer needle climb, far past any legal or safe limit for a rig that size, on a road that dark. I didn't care. The image of that thing, that child shape with its dark umbilical to the woods, and that voice, that awful, grinding voice asking its horrifying question, was burned onto the inside of my eyelids. I must have driven for an hour, maybe more, at speeds that should have gotten me killed or arrested, before the adrenaline started to fade, replaced by a bone-deep, shaking exhaustion that was more profound than any fatigue I'd ever known. My hands were trembling so violently I could barely keep the wheel straight. Tears were streaming down my face, not from sadness, but from sheer, unadulterated terror and relief. When the first hint of dawn started to gray the eastern sky, and my phone finally beeped, indicating a single bar of service, I pulled over at the first wide spot I could find. I practically fell out of the cab, vomiting onto the gravel until there was nothing left but dry heaves. I sat there on the cold ground, shaking, for a long time, watching the sun come up, trying to convince myself that it had been a dream, a hallucination brought on by exhaustion. But I knew it wasn't. The detail of that tube, the voice, the question. You don't hallucinate something that specific, that coherent, that utterly alien. I never reported it. Who would I report it to? What would I say? Officer, I saw a little kid who was actually an ancient cosmic horror tethered to the woods by a nightmare umbilical cord. And it got mad because I didn't want to be its dinner? They'd have locked me up, breathalyzed me, drug-tested me, sent me for a psych eval. I finished that run on autopilot, dropped the load, drove my rig back to the yard, and I quit. I told them I was burned out, needed a break. They tried to convince me to stay, offered me different routes, more pay. I just couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that kid, that tube, those woods. Every dark road felt like a trap. I found a local job, something that keeps me home at night. I don't drive in remote areas anymore if I can help it, especially not at night. I still have nightmares. Sometimes, when I'm very tired, driving home late from somewhere, I'll see a flicker at the edge of my vision, on the side of the road, and my heart will try to beat its way out of my chest. I don't know what that thing was. An alien? A demon? Something else? Something that doesn't fit into our neat little categories? All I know is that it's out there, and it's patient, and it seems to have learned that its old tricks aren't as effective as they used to be. Why the fuck are humans smarter now? That question haunts me. It implies they weren't always. It implies that once upon a time we were easier. That maybe, just maybe, people like me, tired and alone on dark roads, used to just step out of the cab when asked, and were never seen again. So, if you're ever driving one of those long, lonely stretches of road, deep in the night, and you see something you can't explain, maybe just keep driving. Maybe being smarter now means knowing when not to stop. Knowing when to ignore that little voice telling you to help. Because what's asking for help might not be what it seems. Stay safe out there. And for God's sake, stay on the well-lit roads.